Hello and welcome to the Bunker Hills Activity Center. My name is Kim Hallberg and I'm part of the Master Gardener program. And today we're going to be talking about the basics of planting a tree. So the first thing I want to talk about is the site. Assessing the site and choosing the right site will make all the difference in the health and longevity of your tree. So let's for a moment look at the Veterans Peace Garden. And as you look at it over, you can see that we have some beautiful oaks in the background. We have the flags and a nice sculpture. We have the garden laid out in certain sections. And then you can notice the shrubs is what we call in landscape the keys. So they help round out those corners and provide structure. But if you look at the park, there's an ornamental tree to the right. But on the left, it's kind of empty over there. And actually, we used to have a couple ornamental trees, but quite a few years ago they were cut down. And currently we're using that area for a different purpose, for native seeds and growing native plants. But I feel like there needs to be some balance on that side. And so I'm choosing that side to place the tree, and today we're going to feature the ginkgo tree for our tree that we're going to plant. But as I go over the basics, they really apply to any tree that you want to install in your yard. Rule number one, don't plant it too close to the building. You need to look at the mature size of your tree. If it has a 20-foot spread, 40-foot spread, 50-foot spread, then you need to back off from the house enough feet so that it doesn't grow into your house or other trees, and consider your neighbor's property line as well. So let's move over here. I want to show you a few tools of the trade. Okay, so these are some tools that I like to use when planting a tree. You can see I have buckets. This is for soil that we're going to put our soil in when we dig the hole. In this bucket I have some mulch. We're going to want to mulch around the tree, but not too heavy. I have shovels and a rake, and I have my machete, which we will use for the rip ball if we need to do that. Some shovels. We're going to measure out the site so that we get that right. And we might add a little bit of compost, but I just want to caution you not to use too much compost, because you really want to mix the soil that's already in the ground with a little bit of compost. But if you get that compost too heavy, it just kind of gets gunked up with the water and it just doesn't assimilate with the other soil that well. So if you need more additional information, you can check out the University of Minnesota Extension website for more details. So let's start measuring out that site. I'd like it to be about 4 feet away from the grasses. And then I have some evergreen shrubs. I don't want it to get too close to that. So I'll probably measure about 4 feet from there. So I'm looking at this because I think it'd be nice if it did have a little bit of shade that went over here when people are walking by, and then they just want to stop underneath the shade and look at the garden. So my next step is to get the shovel and start digging. All right, another little tip that I'd like to pass on to everybody that's really helped me is one of these sticks that you use for snow plows. And sometimes as a visual, that's not quite 4 feet there, but maybe over here. And then I can step back, and it just helps me to visualize, do I really like that spot? Is that going to work? And I think it will. So I'm going to go get the tree. It's a ginkgo tree. The ginkgo tree is not a native to America. It's actually from China, and it's also known as the maidenhair tree. And it's a very, very old species, ancient species. It's not a very fast grower at first, but I would like to point out that whenever you plant a tree, if you're going to choose from a short sapling to a tall developed tree, always go with the shorter one. So the research that I've looked at with the University Extension site recommends choosing the younger one because the younger one won't experience as much shock. The older one will go into shock they can't handle change. You know, sometimes older trees and older people, they have a little harder time with change than younger people, and younger trees are the same way. So this tree is pretty tall, and I'd like to point out that this container is way too small. So I think it's been getting stressed out from the heat and from this container. So you can see some of the leaves are turning brown, and just a couple weeks ago it was all green. But we're going to give this tree a chance, and I think once it gets in its new home, it's going to enjoy spreading out its roots. So I'm going to dig a hole, but I'm not going to dig it super deep. Some people think you need to dig the hole way deep, but you only go down as deep as the container is. Otherwise it starts sinking down. However, you do dig wider. You can go 1 to 2 feet wider. But first I'm going to check for these irrigation lines because, well, it's just not a good idea to cut irrigation lines, and then you got to call up the parks people and tell them what you did. And so sometimes you got to pull some of the debris away, and we don't have a lot of mulch around here. So I'm glad I brought some of my own mulch to put down. Now this is a natural site, so I'm not as concerned about getting dirt all over the place. But say if I was going to put this in a rock garden area that already had rocks in the landscape, first of all, I would make sure that it's wide enough so that that tree gets air and there's no fabric or plastic around it, and it has a nice mulch ring, like maybe 4 feet in diameter. But sometimes I put a blanket down so I don't get that dirt all over the place. But I'm going to dig this hole, and it's going to be wider on the sides, as I said. And I'm going to save this dirt and maybe mix in a little bit of compost with it, but not too much. All right, I'm ready to check that and see where it's at with my container. Well, that didn't take long to dig down because it's such a small container, and it looks pretty wide. So I'm going to just pat down the bottom a little bit and see where I'm at with the sides. And one of the reasons that you want to dig wider is because you want that loose soil around the edges, because that just helps the roots to loosen up and to be able to get in that soil faster instead of hitting this firm, hard wall of soil. I think that looks pretty good. Okay, now we're going to do the reveal of the root ball, and I've been very tempted to look at it, but I really wanted to have this initial reaction so I can assess it and see what happens. Now sometimes, I don't want to pull too hard on the stem. I can see there's already stress, so I better get a scissors and just cut off this container. So I grabbed my machete because I'm suspicious of some of the roots. And I'm going to simply cut down. I'll hold this up a little bit up here. I can just about hear this ginkgo saying, "Oh, free at last. I just want to be a tree." I'll cut that side. I have pulled trees and shrubs out of containers, but I could tell this one was really stuck hard. And I did not want to stress this tree out any more than I have to. Well, it looks like there's some good rich soil. I'm just trying to tug on the bottom without actually tugging on the stem of the tree. All right. Now here you have the bottom, and you can see all those roots there. And we don't want to just plop it down on the roots. And the sides really don't look too bad. The other thing that you want to check for that's very important with trees is I'm going to remove this debris. And I'm going to check down, I'm going to dig down just a little bit to where the tree actually starts its first spreading out of some roots. So what do you think I'm looking for? I'm looking for something that's called girdling roots. And basically, if there's some roots that are going around and around and around in this area, eventually it can choke the tree and kill it and stress it out. So I'm just going to gently poke around a little bit, see what I can find. And so far so good. Just a little hair of a root there. This one, I'm just going to snip that. Just a little concerned about that. This one is going straight out. It's not going around. So I'm very happy with this root ball. It's better than I thought it was going to be. So just some of these random things I'm cutting off right here. That's not going to hurt it at all. That's just a weed. Here's something. We want to get rid of that too. Any of this stuff on top. Okay, so getting back to the bottom, we're just going to turn this over and I'm going to make an X on the bottom. Any knife can do, some old knife you got, some old saw. I wouldn't recommend going into the kitchen, getting one of your knives from there, like some people have done to my kitchen, but I'm not going to mention any names. Okay, look at all this stuff. This is pretty loose. And I'm going to loosen up the sides just a little bit, just so they can break through a little bit easier. But I'm going to trim up some of those roots a little bit in the bottom, because otherwise they're just going to lay in there all bunched up. The tree's going to be confused. So back to my scissors, or you can get a little pruner. But you can see some of this stuff. We're just going to trim this up a little bit. You don't have to go too crazy with the whole trim job, but that's pretty good. Now we're going to set it in the hole. And we're going to put in soil, but we're also going to do something very important. I grew up planting trees with my dad, so that's why I'm really comfortable with it, but I did do some more research with it. But my job was to always hold the hose. So my dad would have a sapling that he would grow from the seed, and then he'd pick a site, dig the hole, wider than the tree, put the tree in, put a little water in, put a little soil in, put some more water in, and the water seeps down and compresses that soil so you don't get big air bubbles. But it also helps that tree to just get that big drink of water that it needs right away. Maybe a little compost mixed with the soil, then some more water. So first I'm going to set it in, and then I'm going to get out the garden hose. Let me see. Let me see if I'm happy with this. Got to check the dirt there. I think I'll use my machete. Let's see if I need to just get a little bit down on the bottom. But not too much. And I know I'm going to have some compost on there too. And some mulch. So I'm going to pat that down on the bottom. Leave the sides loose, pat the bottom. All right, come here. All right. So I'm going to put the first layer of dirt in. It's just going to be the dirt that I took out. This is really good dirt. Anoka County's the sand plain, but here in the Veterans Peace Garden, we've had mulch put down for many, many years, and it's broken down, and it's turned into this lovely, loamy soil. So it's not super sandy, not super clay. It's just right. Try not to get these weeds in here. All right, I'm going to get a little more soil in here, and then I'm going to get some water going. And talking about water, that first week is really important, how much you water the tree. But it's more important to go slow than to go fast and dump a bunch of water on in a couple minutes. So what they recommend, and what my dad used to do, is a slow drip. And then you just put the hose on there. You build up like a little well of soil and mulch, and you just put a slow drip on there for a couple of hours. And that's a lot better for the tree. So just leave the hose in that area. I'm going to turn this on and make sure that it's not all hot water, and it's not. So I'm just going to lightly water that. Wait for it to sit a little bit. And then I think I'm going to add just a touch of the compost, but not too much. So as I said, you can mix it in with the soil a little bit. That's what I'm going to do. Or just put it straight in there for a little bit. Kind of layer it like a lasagna. A little lasagna dinner for the new tree. So I'm going to add some more of that. And you can see the tree's kind of leaning to the side again a little bit. I'm going to pull it over and put stuff underneath there. But I'm choosing not to stake this tree because different studies have shown that when you stake the tree, you're helping it too much. It's kind of like helping a caterpillar get out of its cocoon, because they need to struggle to make their wings strong. And this tree needs to struggle in the wind so that its roots reach out and grab onto that ground and grow deep and wide. But if you have too much support, it gets a little bit lazy and it just kind of sits there. And then when you take the supports off and the big winds come, well, sometimes it's just not good news. But we're going to keep watering. One more thing while I'm talking about it is, what about protecting the stem in the winter? You can wrap it with cloth, or you can put a plastic, white, not black, a plastic PVC around it that's loose, not tight. And what does that help with? That helps with that winter sun that wants to come in from the west and the south and heat up that side of the trunk. And then it gets cold at night. And then you get cracks. And the trees, they harden off in the fall. But in the spring, they start waking up. And you don't want them to wake up too soon. You want them to sleep in as long as possible. So if you have a collar that you put around it for the first couple of years, 2 years, 3 at the most, that'll help that tree to have its stem, its trunk all protected. So we're just going to keep putting some soil in here. Things are looking good. Whoops, I dug up a bulb, I'll have to put that somewhere else. I'm going to get rid of these weeds, and I'm going to build a little moat, just like I would a little sand castle on the beach. So we're going to start patting that down. I can tell this is where my stem is. Okay. I think for today, I'm going to maybe just add a bit more compost on top. Well, I guess I got some more dirt here, but it's kind of weedy. I'm just going to add a touch more compost. Oh, here it is. And then I'm going to water it one more time, and then I'm going to apply the mulch. And what I got to say about mulch is there's a right way and a wrong way to do it around the tree. And I want you, the next time you're driving around the neighborhood or going through someplace, start looking at trees and mulch. Because what some people do is they volcano it up. So it's going all up the sides, big and tall. But that actually is harmful to the tree. So what you need to think about is going out and getting a donut. And when you do the mulch around your tree like a donut, that lets all the air and all the nutrients come in. And so the tree, you don't really hardly even need any right at the base, just a little tiny bit to cover it up, and then go heavier on the outside. So we've got our water, and now I'm going to apply my mulch. Okay, so I'm working up a sweat here. A lot of times I wear a handkerchief, and that's just what gardeners do. They get a little dirt, they get a little sweat, but we have a lot of fun. Okay, and we always clean up. So I'm going to sprinkle this lightly, like I'm putting sprinkles on a donut. Remember, we talked about donuts. And now I'm going to go heavier around the edges. And this isn't a real big circle for today, but I just got the tree planted in this spot. If I was actually putting this in a turf situation, I would have made this a lot bigger. 5 feet in diameter is what they suggest. But today I'm starting with this, and maybe someday, in 5 years, we're going to have to really make this turf circle bigger. But today it's just the right size. So, aftercare. Well, I'm just not going to walk away and forget about my new friend. I'm going to come back, and I'm going to have the hose on low. I'm going to come out here a couple times a week. There is an irrigation system that runs here every other day for about 20 minutes, more when it's hot. So I know it gets some water, but it needs extra care, especially the first week. So I'm going to bring that hose out, and instead of watering it like I did today, I'm going to have it on a very low drip. And then I'll just go run some errands or whatever, come back, and then turn it off. And then every week after that, I'm going to check the weather. And if we haven't had any rain, I'm going to make sure I get out here once or twice to again do the drip through the month of August. And then in September, I can lighten up on the watering. But for sure in October, I want to make sure there's adequate water if we don't get enough rain, because it needs to get ready to go to bed for the winter. And so all the trees and all the shrubs need a little bit of extra water in October. And as far as pruning, it's best to do it in the spring or in the fall. So just check on the website about ginkgo trees or any other trees that you have to make sure that you prune them in the right season. So, I might pick off some of these leaves, but for now, I think we did a pretty good job, and I think the ginkgo's going to be happy, and I just want to thank you for joining me in the Veterans Peace Garden right next to the Bunker Hills Activity Center.